Chased by the deep state, fighting for independence, thinking about revolution, looking for alternative solutions. The enemies of the deep state will tell you what others even don't dare to think. Manuel Ochsenreiter and Mateusz Piskorski.
Hello, hello, hello from the bunkers of Corona. Here is the geopolitical podcast DieGutenMenschen, public enemies of the deep state. My name is Manuel Ochsenreiter. I am editor-in-chief of the German news magazine Zuerst, and I talk again and again and again to Mateusz Piskorski in Poland. Hello, Mateusz.
That's right. It's again me, and I'm representing the weekly magazine Myśl Polska, Polish Thought from Poland.
With a brilliant interview with me, we have to say it.
Yes. We have to recommend for all those who read Polish, but I still hope that it will be published in other languages soon. Our lengthy conversation, which will be published in the coming issue of our newspaper.
We decided to put the podcast also on the level of print media.
Yes, we use all possible means during these hard times.
We have no other people anymore to talk to, so we talk always with each.
We focus on ourselves. Yes.
Ourselves, yes. But I think it's not really true. We have commenters, and our last podcast about Libya was quite controversial. Is that right?
Yes, I remember that there were some voices and comments from Turkey, if I'm not wrong. Yes.
Yes.
Because as we have discussed the role of Turkey in Libya, I remember there was a comment that actually Europe, Western European countries, are those who could be blamed for all this chaos in Libya and the situation with the failed Libyan state. Yes. Mm-hmm. But we didn't discuss with that. I mean, we completely share the view that, the Western post-colonial states like France, like Italy, have their share in destabilizing situation in Libya in 2011. That's without any discussion, I think, yes?
Yeah, we were not objecting that, as far as I remember.
Yes. Yeah. Exactly. There is one other voice I remember, one other comment on the level of support of General Haftar. Mm-hmm. But this we cannot comment, as well as the authors who have taken the floor cannot comment on that from a scientific point of view, or cannot give any proofs of actually how high is the support for General Haftar, because as we all remember, for instance, some Russian sociologists preparing an opinion poll in Libya, I mean on the territories controlled by the Tripoli government, have been arrested. So I don't think that anyone would dare to convey and to have professional opinion polling in those areas in Tripoli, for instance. What do you think?
Yes, a source would have been helpful for I think the number was something like 40%.
It was like 40. It was big enough, of course, anyway, but nevertheless, we cannot rely on the things which are not proved, I mean, by professional opinion polling there, yes? Anyway, we thank our listeners, also our listeners from Turkey, for their opinions as well.
I think we had two other comments. Also, one was saying that it was absolutely great. I say from my side, thank you. And the other one said it was totally shit or so.
Of course, we, as we are not so modest, will agree with the first opinion, I guess. Yes?
No, it makes me happy. That means we have at least 3 listeners.
Yes.
One more than hosts, and then we are on a good way.
That's already a success. Yes.
But today we speak about Europe, and especially about the future of the European Union. If it has a future, if and I think we should start already at the point of the name, is what is of course always a mission of Brussels and of the representatives of the European Union to make the term European Union equal to the term Europe. What do you think? Are they equal? Does European Union mean the same like Europe?
Well, of course not. European Union is an artificial structure, bureaucratic structure, which has been created out of purely, in the beginnings, of course, out of purely, let's say, a neoliberal model, social and economic model. And I guess that this was rather about, let's say, economy, finances, monetary union, and not about the European identity as such. I mean, not only the cultural identity, but also, I mean here the geopolitical identity, the geopolitical consciousness of Europe as a continent. So that's why I think European Union becomes less and less attractive as an integrating structure, particularly in times of crisis. And that's why European Union is unable, in my opinion, to create this common European identity. I mean, remember the German, actually, the German philosopher and political thinker Jürgen Habermas has talked several times about the need, an urgent need of creating a single European identity, yes? Mm-hmm. There was an idea of creating pan-European political parties, which would be the only entities entitled to participate in European elections, the European level parties, creating a common European political system, but they have not succeeded in all those projects because, in my opinion at least, European Union lacks the spirit and lacks the identity which could be retrieved from deep analysis of European history from the ancient times through the medieval and so on, because we definitely have something in common. I think you will agree, yes?
Absolutely, but let me now interrupt you, because that was very interesting. You mentioned Habermas, who interprets himself as a type of state philosopher. He is the patriot of the constitution, or constitutional patriotism, and he brought in all these ideas. He roots, of course, also back to the Frankfurt School, but it is symptomatic that you mention a German philosopher, because I want to ask you, do you know, that is maybe almost a personal or a private question, but we bring it now in the podcast. Do you know any Polish friend of yours, or do you know anyone in Poland who would say about himself, before he says I'm a proud Polish, that he says I am a proud citizen of the European Union? Do you know anyone?
Well, I think we could only here speak about some people who are, let's say, quite similar to the anti-Deutsche movement in Germany. So those who are rejecting the whole concept of national identity. We have such people because, we have everywhere such people in every European country. But of course, they are a minority, and these are just let's say, very isolated cases in the Polish society as a whole. So that's the point, yes? Yes. There's no such a thing as European identity for the moment being. And because even if you ask them, yes, of course they claim they are Europeans, but if you ask them what does it mean to them to be a European, yes, their answer will be completely connected to all these, let's say, politically correct issues, those issues of, LGBT rights and so on. Yes, so for them, being a European means being a, let's say, a liberal or libertarian in cultural means, in the spirit of 1968. Yes.
Yeah. In a nutshell, the answer is then always, I think we can call it almost anti-identity, anti-national and cultural identity. And I tell you something, and I think you share this experience with me. it is. You just said, well, you have these people in Poland, but I think it's very hard to find them. You must know where they are, and you must know the pubs where they meet, and then you might find people who say this. But I wanted to ask you, as also someone who used to travel a lot, also through European countries, for me, it was almost impossible to find anyone. And that doesn't depend necessarily on the political spectrum of the person. Anyone in Europe saying, I am a proud citizen of the European Union. I'm not saying European, I'm saying citizen of the European Union, only in Germany. Only Germany is the country where people say that, where intellectuals think they are much more intellectual by saying such a thing. And I tell you something ironic. I totally understand any Eastern European or French or Italian or whoever who thinks, if the German define themselves all of the sudden as Europeans, is this something like a new expansionism, just with a more smoothie name or so? So I totally, but it is a German specialty that people, I don't know if you followed that. We had even last year and the year before when the Eurosceptic movements became very strong everywhere in Europe, and we shouldn't forget that we had in two countries at least two Eurosceptic governments, in Austria with the FPÖ and in Italy with Lega and Five Star Movement. So we had in Germany pro-EU demonstrations. I say pro-EU demonstrations, not pro-European demonstrations. We had manifestations, Pulse of Europe, they called themselves, with the European Union flag. So quite interesting. And I think that has to do, you mentioned a little bit the history of the European Union. We shouldn't forget that the European Union roots back in the very early contracts in the early 1950s about, you said, the monetary union. That is how it started. And what was the sense of the monetary union? It's today always shown a little bit nice. Yes, we wanted to connect the industry and the economy. But the sense, the deep sense of the monetary union was to control the German industry, to make the German industry more transparent to the other European countries, to see if Germany is preparing again for a world war by, for example, the production of arms. So monetary union means nothing else that the German steel and coal production was made transparent and under control, so mutual European control on that. And we can see the European Union a little bit also as a consequence of World War II, maybe not the worst consequence, that the European countries are not anymore on war with each other. I think this is, we agree both, one of the positive consequences or the positive developments we have. But from the beginning, it was a type of a project to make the Germans not to be so German anymore. Or what would you say?
Well, that's partly true, of course. But on the other hand, well, actually, let's be realistic. Yes, European Union would not be ever possible without the German participation. Yes, European Union has practically one driving force, and it is Germany. I mean now, not before. You are right when it comes to history, but now, as far as I observe that, I mean, European Union is perhaps not an instrument of Germany or German policy or economy, but is a project that is based on the presence of German economy and of German money, of course, in it. Yes, so this is actually a project run by Germany, partly by France, but not to such a huge extent. And one more thing, I don't know what are the opinion polls and what is the opinion of average German citizen about European Union, but well, we all criticize European Union, for instance, in Central European countries, on the one hand, but on the other hand, can you imagine that European Union has still around 75-80% support in countries like Poland or Czech Republic or Hungary? Even in those countries, which are harshly criticized by Brussels lately. Yes, so what I think about it is that people need the idea of European integration and so on. It's quite deeply rooted in the minds of the people, but of course they reject the shape the European Union has now. Yes, I mean, for instance, what could make a European Union more attractive, or European integration more attractive? On the one hand, I think that one of the most important things is, let's say, a unique economic and social model. Yes, which means I don't know if you know a book by Jeremy Rifkin. He called it the European Dream. Yes, so the European Dream was actually the European social model, which was attractive not only in Europe, but for instance in neoliberal United States. Yes, but at the moment being, we don't have this model being realized. To create this common European social model, we will need single taxes, one universal system of taxes in European Union, one universal standards when it comes to social policy, and so on. And we are very far from that. So I think that the legitimacy of European Union is quite weak, which doesn't mean that people do not support the integration of Europe. They support the integration of Europe wholeheartedly, but not necessarily in the form of present European Union.
I think that is the core. Also, when it comes to those polls, if people support European Union or not, we should watch these polls very, very closely, because it is exactly as you say. To speak for Germany, also a Eurosceptic German who is criticizing the bureaucratic procedures, who is criticizing the Brussels state monster, of course enjoys the inner European Schengen border, no border control, the absence of border controls. He enjoys all these things. And of course, we enjoy the things such as the absence, or what is, I think, introduced last year, of the roaming costs for the phones inside European Union. So all these things, they are pretty much positive, but so you can enjoy this, but be at the same time critical towards the European Union. And why is that like this? I think it's not just because the opponent or the EU bureaucratics are so evil and dictate then how these polls are made and so on. I think it lacks one of the main reasons is that there is not right now at least there is not a very popular alternative model for Europe. When we speak to Eurosceptics, I'm pretty much sure you know that yourself, you speak to 10 Eurosceptics and you get 20 opinions about the future of Europe. The first says we have to reform the European Union, the next says we have to abolish the European Union and go back to the nation state, the next one says we have to abolish the European Union but also abolish the nation state and make a Europe of regions, the so-called Europe of thousand flags, I think it is called as well. The next one says, yeah, we need some European alliance, but only on the economic level. The Europe of nations, the Europa der Vaterländer, the Charles de Gaulle idea. So what all opponents of the recent European Union lack is an alternative model everyone can agree on. Or what do you think?
That's why we should devote a separate discussion for different ideas, for discussing different ideas of alternative European integration, I guess, because yes, you are right, there are dozens, if not hundreds of different concepts. Still, there is no discussion at the level of, for instance, European Union institutions. I mean, I would be really eager to listen to such debates about the future shape of European integration in the European Parliament, but they are only focusing on solving some technical and bureaucratic issues usually, and they even do not try to let's say, go deeper into the whole essence of Europe and of continental integration, yes, and of its reason. That's, I think, a weak point of almost every political party in Europe. I mean, in the political parties, we don't have such debates. We used to have such debates in different intellectual circles. For instance, you have mentioned the idea of Europe of 1,000 flags. It was some time ago quite well discussed and elaborated by the European New Rights circles, yes?
Yeah.
So we need such discussions. We need to think together, as we are still in this existing structure of European Union. What is possible? Is it possible to deeply reform the existing structure, or, for instance, in the future, should we think about a completely new structure and new integration block in Europe? But as you also know, I'm very open to such discussions, but basically I am a supporter of European integration as such. I mean, not necessarily in the form of European Union, but personally I think that the European integration and the ability to act together is the only means to become one of the global players, yes, worldwide for our countries, because we cannot even, I think that even Germany, with all the respect for the German economic power, I think and I fear that even Germany cannot do very much alone on the global arena. So we need discussion about European integration, European cooperation, and I think that we should devote our discussions also to that topic in the future.
Shouldn't we go even more far? I am not at all someone who would say we have to go back to the national states and then Germany can do all that alone. Not at all. I think what is a very important point in all these debates is that if we say now the European Union will be replaced by another structure, but that the economic European integration shouldn't make a step back, but a step forward. And to do this step forward, this is my opinion, to do the step forward, maybe we should even think bigger. You see, the German is speaking again. Shouldn't we think bigger, and shouldn't we even have always in our view the Eurasian integration when we speak about the European integration? Because did you notice when the establishment today is speaking about Europe, first of all, of course, they always mean the European Union, but they always exclude the Russian Federation, or the Russian world, we have to say. They exclude the Russian world. Can be there a European concept by excluding Russia from this? I don't think so.
I don't know. I guess that we all know that some of the European politicians, namely the former Polish Minister of Foreign Affairs Piskorski, and former Swedish Prime Minister Bildt, back in 2009 proposed the idea of Eastern Partnership, for instance, yes? Mm-hmm. This was a geopolitical idea to exclude Russia from all integration processes on the Eurasian territory, not only when it comes to European Union, but also when it comes to post-Soviet countries. So I think personally that several politicians in European countries have tried to let's say, strike Russian interests. And by coincidence, all those politicians were more or less connected with some political circles in Washington, yes? Mm-hmm. So definitely, yes, I agree with you that we should talk about a larger format of integration in the future. Anyway, on the other hand, I think that we should first create an effective formula of integration in Europe, on the one hand. On the other hand, there should be an effective formula of integration of the post-Soviet area. I mean, for instance, the Eurasian Economic Union, which has been initiated by Russia. And then after we solve all our problems within those two blocks, we should start negotiating our partnership within a huge Eurasian Union of the future, yes? But I personally think that the first step should be a real European integration and a real Eurasian integration when it comes to the limited, for the first stage, limited to the post-Soviet area.
Of course, I totally agree, and we should say we are here not speaking about steps and measures which would take 1, 2, or 3 years, but this is really a long-term project. And you mentioned, I think this is essential that Europe has to change itself first before we can speak then about bigger integrations. But what is necessary? Maybe just as a last point, one essential development for Europe becoming itself, in my opinion, would be also step by step. This is not going overnight, but would be the complete and proper de-Americanization of Europe. Because I am convinced that Europe cannot be Europe with the presence of American military, American influence, institutionalized American influence. They will always try to influence, like other powers always will try to influence, but institutionalized US-American influence, American cultural dominance. So we speak about a problem on many levels, and Europe must be a European Europe and not an American Europe. Or what do you think?
Well, the biggest advantage of the acting American president, Donald Trump, in my opinion, is that he has dared to openly voice their true attitude, their true feeling about Europe as such. I mean, several times he has placed Europe, or European Union even, among the enemies of United States, quite openly. I mean, he was calling that we have competitors or even enemies in the face of China, Russia, and Europe, or European Union, yes? So that was very honest from his side, and we should be really grateful that he's quite realistic.
More.
Yes, but I really agree and appreciate that he has told that so openly and publicly, because, he's right. United States is a separate geopolitical player. Europe should be a separate and independent geopolitical player as well. And only then we can speak about the multipolar world. So this is the condition, yes? So I totally agree that Europe should not be neither American, neither, I don't know, Chinese or Arabic, for instance, but it should be European. And as soon as we'll manage to de-Americanize it, we'll be able to start the construction of a new integration block of a genuine European integration.
So we are already heading to the end of our podcast, so let's not waste time and start right now with some de-Americanization activities, and let us speak soon again about another topic.
Yes, let's also enhance our listeners to share their opinions with us, so we'll also comment on the opinions of the listeners as well.
Whatever they will write.
Of course.
Okay, thank you so much for your attention. I say bye-bye from my bunker.
Bye. Bye to all.
This program was presented to you by Manuel Ochsenreiter and Mateusz Piskorski, the hottest dissident who won't violate any time the global rules against racism, extremism, or any other bad isms.